The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. We would like to hand over to the prosecution now, please. Co-prosecutor, please hold on. Counsel for Mr. Evidentiary, you may now proceed. Counsel Angadam. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon to you, Your Honors, and to my learned colleagues and everyone in and around the courtroom. I would request that the co-prosecutor refrain from presenting documents that are supporting the facts relevant to the crimes as the accused is charged. Here we are in the session when we are presenting documents concerning the document E124 and E124/7.3. So the matter being discussed shall be relevant to that portions. And here we are discussing about the roles. For example, the role of Mr. Evidentiary. I would like that this role is presented. For example, like Mr. Evidentiary was the Minister of Foreign Affairs or Minister of any of the ministry, so on and so forth. With that, I would like to humbly ask again that documents, inculpatory documents, should be refrained from being represented, because everyone should be on the same page. We are now discussing about the role of the accused. That's all we want to hear. So it is important that the accused person is to be informed of some allegations concerning his role during the time. So when the co-prosecutor overstepping to presenting documents concerning the crimes in this portion of the session, we take that as inappropriate or irrelevant.
Mr. President, if I can respond as follows. My learned friend is quite wrong about the relevant aspects of the closing order to which these presentations are addressed. And of course, in E124/7.3, Your Honours have listed a number of paragraphs which are relevant to this trial and to the role of the accused, and specifically in relation to Mr. Khieu Samphan, the paragraphs starting from 1126 and onwards deal with the matters which I have been covering to date. His membership of the Central Committee, participation in Standing Committee, the role in relation to the Presidium, Ministry of Commerce, disappearances of people he worked with, etc., etc. I'm also a little bit puzzled as to why my friend is making this objection now when the presentation of Evidentiary is well and truly concluded. In conclusion, Your Honours, the presentation follows closely the roles of the accused, in particular in this case of Khieu Samphan, and it is within the paragraphs of the indictment which Your Honours are considering in this case.
Counsel Angadam. Good afternoon, Mr. President, again. I am not actually objecting against the presentation of documents. I only want to alert to the prosecutor that it is repetitive, and in the future, if he is going to do that, it's going to be repetitive. And I think that in the interest of time, we should avoid this. I believe that it will save a lot of court's time if we pursue in this manner. The President, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, you may resume your presentation according to your own strategy. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just before the break, we were looking at document E3/687, which, as I indicated, has been presented before, and I'm noting it here only for because it's relevant. It's part of this period that we're looking at. It's an interview dated the 9th of July 1982 with the New York Times, and it indicates that Khieu Samphan stated that he had taken part in the collective decision to evacuate the Phnom Penh by force. E3/687 and the relevant ERNs Khmer 00651-187, French 006225450, and English 00122-280. At this point, Mr. President, with your permission, we'd like to play a brief video clip. It's just under 3 minutes in length. It is from 1983, according to the information on the case file, and it is an interview with Khieu Samphan. The relevant document number is D232/110.1.1.6R, and in the AV units table it is video E. So with your permission, Mr. President, we will play this brief segment.
The President, you may proceed. Every unit is now instructed to play the video clip as suggested.
Monsieur le Président, vous savez à quel...
Mr. President, you know how negative the image of the Khmer Rouge is. They have been associated with a true genocide. They massacred hundreds of thousands of Cambodians. Do you deny all guilt in these massacres? Answer, errors were committed. But I can reassure you that those errors were committed at the level of executions. You can imagine how tense the situation was after the war. In all revolutions, there may be excesses here and there. And in the case of our revolution, we cannot see any exception to the rule. There were cases of personal vendetta. There were reprisals by people in rural areas against people coming from the towns. And in the case of all cases of revenge, we did our best to stop them and to limit them. But to say that systematic massacres were committed is not true. I'll say no to that. The name of Pol Pot is associated with the massacres directly. When you hear the name Pol Pot, you think of a blood-sucking murderer. Do you dissociate yourself from the decisions he took? Like all of us, Pol Pot is a sincere patriot. He loves his people, he loves his country, as I do, and the people as well. Our people know that we committed errors, one error or the other, but they also know that we, all of us, sacrificed ourselves for our country and for our people. That the people know as well. And that is what explains the fact that, in spite of everything,
Thank you, Your Honours. The relevance of that document, of course, is the discussion by Khieu Samphan of the causes that led to the crimes of his own role in relationship also with Pol Pot. The next document that we would take you to is document E3/703, E3/703, and it is dated the 15th of July 1987. 15th of July 1987. It is issued by the Office of the Vice President of Democratic Kampuchea in charge of foreign affairs, an office held at that point in time by Khieu Samphan. The document is entitled, "What are the truth and justice about the accusations against Democratic Kampuchea of mass killings from 1975 to 1978. Again, it's a rather long document, so we will just quote from it selectively the portions where the atrocities and the responsibility of the authorities for those atrocities are discussed. The document denies that the government was responsible for a large number of deaths during the Khmer Rouge period. And the first relevant passage is at Khmer ERN 007000550, French 006937994 and following, and English ERN 0004001. And the section is entitled, "The number of people who died from various factors during the 1975 to 1978 rule of Democratic Kampuchea. Number one, the number of people who died from illness and food shortage." Quote, "According to preliminary but careful assessments, the number of people who died from illness and food shortage during the 3-year period throughout the country amounted to more than 20,000, of which the majority were people evacuated from the cities who were not used to the hardship of the countryside. The food shortage had been mainly caused by the Vietnamese agents infiltrated in our state organs who carried out activities of sabotage, especially to destroy medicines and other materials, and stole tens of thousands of tons of rice each year from 1975 to 1978 and sent them to Vietnam." The next section deals with another source of deaths. It is at Khmer ERN 007005551 to 552, French 006937996 to 7, and English 0004002. Under item 2, the number of people who died from Vietnam's agents in violation of the state policy. Quote, "As a result of such criminal activities of Vietnam's agents, 10,000 people died. Vietnam and their agents had the plan to kill as many as possible, but they could not implement their plan at will because the overwhelming majority of our cadre were dedicated people who enjoyed the support of the people." The next section is particularly relevant, number 3, the number of people who died from our mistakes. And I'll quote from a part of that section. "The situation got all the more confused of the subversive activities of Vietnam's agents. Thus, in our measures to arrest and punish those Vietnam's agents, we committed mistakes that affected the lives of minor offenders or innocent civilians. From 1975 to 1978, over 3,000 people died in this category. As we were able to get rid of Vietnam's agents infiltrated in our state organs, we were also able to progressively prevent such mistakes. A little bit further down, he discusses how the number of deaths or arrests was reduced, and I quote, "Besides, we had also a lenient policy towards the enemy of the nation and people, and we implemented it as follows. Number one, to educate those whom we had concrete evidence that they were enemy's agents. Number two, to relieve them of their duties and send them to work in cooperatives or state farms like ordinary people so that they could educate themselves. Only a small number of Vietnam's agents who continued to systematically carry out activities to overthrow democratic Kampuchea were arrested, imprisoned, and sentenced." The next section, number 4, deals with the numbers who died as part of the struggle against the traitors. I quote here, "The number of people who died from the struggle against the enemy, especially in June 1978, was only in dozens. We were able to keep this figure low because when we took measures to arrest the traitors, we did not send whole army units to arrest the entire centres or departments or zone and provincial headquarters. We arrested 1 or 2 at a time." And then he goes on to discuss the arrest of Sao Pim. The relevance of these passages, Your Honours, is the discussion of centralised, or what appears to be centralised, acknowledgement of a centralised policy and efforts to arrest the enemies. Then there are concluding remarks on the Democratic Kampuchea rule and on the control exercised by the Communist Party during the period. This is at Khmer ERN 007000556, French 00693798799, and English 0004004. Quote, "As for the loss of lives of the Kampuchean people by any means during that period, it is still small in comparison with other countries in the world, whether during big historical changes or peaceful time. Even though we had to face Vietnamese subversive activities in Kampuchea and their acts of aggression at the border, we always relied on the people to crush these subversive activities and to defend our country." A little bit further down, "We were able to do so because of our confidence on the people and of their support, and because we were fully in control of the situation through the people in various departments and in the cooperatives." Lastly, on the following page, in all 3 languages, he concludes as follows, quote, "To be fair, the number of people who died in Kampuchea from 1975 to 1978 is less than people who died by car accidents in some countries, where each year 30,000 people or more died from road accidents." Before we leave this report, I will just note for the record that the rest of it seeks to attribute 2.5 million deaths of Cambodians to the Vietnamese in the period 1979 and 1980. The next document, Your Honours, in which Khieu Samphan discusses his role in the regime and his knowledge or otherwise of the policies and crimes committed during the regime, is D366/7.172. It is an interview with the French newspaper Le Monde, and I will quote from two sections of this interview only. At Khmer ERN 00002735, French 00710202, and English 007164438. He says the following: Pol Pot used to talk about enemies from without and from within, he continued. But I found that normal because we were a young revolutionary regime which had been through so much. And in the next paragraph, from 1975 to 1979, he said, there was no debate. The Politburo meetings I attended were simply Pol Pot monologues. He said that the former dictator, who died in 1998 in unexplained circumstances, started to lose touch with reality following the 1975 military victory. But everyone within the Communist Party ranks continued to commend and endorse his actions because he spoke of the threat posed by the American CIA and the Vietnamese. His explanation sounds unconvincing considering the purges within the communist leadership were ongoing. The next passage of that article, at Khmer ERN 00002738-39, French 00710-204, and English 007164442. Quote, even though he acknowledges the genocide, albeit belatedly, Khieu Samphan insists that he still has conflicting feelings about the Khmer Rouge leader. Quote, Pol Pot was always forthcoming with me, and I can say that he regarded me as a patriotic intellectual. He used to liken our relationship to that between Lenin and Gorky, and seemed to think that intellectuals like me do not have both feet on the ground. Speaking about Ta Mok, whose alliance with Pol Pot was crucial, he said that he never took notes during meetings. Whenever Ta Mok was reprimanded by Pol Pot, he would begin scribbling on cigarette paper. Asked whether he was ever threatened by the Khmer Rouge leadership, Khieu Samphan answered, to tell you the truth, never. Even Ta Mok liked me. I had no problems with him. The relevance of that document, Your Honours, is obviously that it records Khieu Samphan's apparent admissions of participation in meetings, his relationship with Pol Pot, and also his awareness of meetings between Ta Mok and Pol Pot, or his presence at those meetings, as well as the fact that he didn't feel under any threat. The next relevant document is E3/198. It is a 17th of August 2005 interview of Khieu Samphan by SOAS, the School of Oriental and Asian and African Studies of the University of London. It's a short document, so I only mention it in passing. The relevant contents of it include and an indication by Khieu Samphan that the Central Committee received reports from the regions, although he alleges that the Central Committee could not control the situation but only receive the reports. And in that document, he also indicates that he had become aware of arrests in the North Zone after the assignment of Kang Chup to be in charge. Before we turn to the two books authored by Khieu Samphan, I would like to now play two excerpts from a documentary which we have seen, parts of which we have seen before, but not these particular parts. It is entitled Pol Pot and Khieu Samphan Facing Genocide. It was produced in 2007 or 2008, and it contains extensive footage of Khieu Samphan and interviews with him. It is document E109/2.3R, and in the AV table it is identified as video J. And Mr. President, with your permission, we will play the first segment now. So this is video J number 1 in the AV table.
When we ask Khieu Samphan about the crimes of the Khmer Rouge, he takes out a pile of papers, pages from a book he's writing. He demands to read from his book first.
First of all, most of the authors had made errors in interpretation. For example, authors including Ben Kiernan wrote that in the campaign against the domination of the Vietnamese, or the Vietnamese to dominate, Pol Pot allied with Tan Mok.
Other academics, and not like the Khmer Rouge leader he's been for 25 years.
In your opinion, how many people were killed during the Khmer Rouge? I can't give you the exact figures. Certainly there were many. But I do not believe that there were as many as 2 million. It's a bit of an exaggerated number. In what way were you responsible? My personal responsibility? I didn't exert any power. Perhaps. But if you are talking about responsibility, one cannot accuse me of anything because I didn't know anything. Why didn't I know anything? Why didn't I try to find out anything? Perhaps you can blame me for that. But for me, I didn't want to know because I respected the rules of the party. Did you feel betrayed by Pol Pot, or cheated that he didn't let you know? No, because afterwards still, I felt that he had reasons for it. What Pol Pot really did, certainly he had reasons for doing so. And the torture center at S21, no, I had no idea about S21. I can't say that Pol Pot had created it, but wasn't he responsible? Pardon me, wasn't he responsible for S21. Of course, since he was the leader of the party. He either tolerated it officially or unofficially. He was the leader of the party and is responsible. Has that changed your respect for Pol Pot? I'm telling you, it is a very complex problem. You can't just simply attribute guilt. You can't just say you're punished and leave. It's not that simple.
And we will move on now to the two books authored by Khieu Samphan, and we will return later to this documentary with your permission, Mr. President. But for now, looking at document E3/16. E3/16. This is a book entitled Considerations on the History of Cambodia from the Early Stage to the Period of Democratic Kampuchea. And this is in chapter 5. It is a very long book, over 300 pages in Khmer. I will only quote a few brief passages where Khieu Samphan discusses his views about the Khmer Rouge movement and also about the policies of the Communist Party. The first passage of relevance is at Khmer ERN 00380-351, French 00643-824, and English 00498-222. He says the following, and this is by way of describing his ability to analyze the Khmer Rouge period. Quote, I have faith in my own general views on the movement based on two things. First, I travelled with the movement for 30 years, and I passed through many twists and turns many times, sometimes at the peril of my life. Second, I personally knew many heroes unknown to others, cadres, combatants, male and female, the beloved children of the peasants who sacrificed their lives for the cause of the nation and the cause of social justice that they so loved and desired. The next passage deals with Khieu Samphan's view on the arrest of one of the senior cadre, Chan Chakri, an East Zone divisional commander. This is at Khmer ERN 00380-444, French 00643-877, and English 00498-272. And this is what he says, quote, as for Chakri, Pol Pot had not trusted him for quite some time. For example, at the 9 October 1975 meeting of the Standing Committee, he remarked that even though his, in brackets, Khoitun's division was strong, the political education of the combatants was not very profound, and Chakri himself was new and had his position because of Vietnam. We must monitor somewhat closely. For fairness, I should indicate there he footnotes a reference to one of the books of Ben Kiernan. But then he goes on to say, it is my understanding that Pol Pot's saying this in front of the Standing Committee was responsible speech, not words of hatred for Chakri because of some matter. He was speaking as a party secretary who had been monitoring Chakri for a very long time. The next passage with respect to the arrest of Chakri and others connected or suspected of being connected to him, Khmer ERN 00380-454, French 00643-877, 883 and English 00498-277. Quote, "Because of the clear interference of the Vietnamese that I have repeatedly described above, I wish to take this opportunity to make an observation. The evidence Philip Short provided about the Vietnamese having created the Khmer Rum Do movement, together with the evidence that other researchers have discovered, makes it clear that all of Pol Pot's monitoring, following his 378 principle of Chakri, Chuk, Ya, and the other cadre who had cooperated with the Viet Minh, was correct. Thus, Philip Short was incorrect when he wrote, the role of prison S21 and the confessions was not primarily to provide information, but rather to provide the proof of treason that they needed to arrest anyone they had already decided to arrest. The policy of independence from Vietnam required the implementation of absolute policies inside the country. In the next section of the book, of this chapter, Khieu Samphan analyzes the confessions of Khoi Tun, alias Tuch, and his understanding of what was happening in relation to Khoi Tun's arrest and those of his associates. Khmer ERN 00380-457, English 00498-279, and French 006438885. Quote, "As I understand it, in these responses there were three primary themes that may have caught Pol Pot's attention. These confessions may have led Pol Pot to believe even more that his arresting Ya was not wrong, and Ya may have been an individual that played an important role in the new party that they were setting up. Second, but the issue that Pol Pot may have noticed most of all was related to the confession of Khoi Tun, meaning Duon of Office 870 having given to Ya secret information of the Standing Committee on the matter of V and Lao, the Secretary and Deputy Secretary in Ratnakiri. Aside from Duon, no one had known."
The President. Mr. Prosecutor, could you please pause? The President, I hand over to Judge Silver Cartwright. You may proceed, Judge.
Yes, Mr. Prosecutor, this is a general announcement, so it doesn't specifically concern you. The President has asked me to inform the parties and the public that we have received a medical report in respect of Nguyen Chia, and it recommends that he have a period of rest for 2 weeks, and following a request by the Chamber for clarification, this was confirmed to be that he must rest completely, that he cannot follow from the holding cells. So this means that the Chamber has to consider how it might proceed next week. The first issue is this, that the document hearing in relation to Kyo Sampan is not yet concluded, and we won't proceed any further with that this afternoon. So that will be the first matter to be resumed on Tuesday. Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia, I have a couple of queries for you. The first is this: we're not asking for any waivers in respect of the first witness scheduled for next week, but there are two, a witness and a civil party, that we would like to have some indication from you concerning. We certainly appreciate that you can't react immediately, but in the circumstances we ask that you keep the court informed over the weekend. The first of these is TCW 100, who is part heard. In other words, his testimony has not yet finished. We understand that he will take between 1 and 2 days to conclude, and it may be that Nguyen Chia is prepared to waive his right to be present in respect of that witness. The next one is TCCP 116. It's clear to the Chamber that on many occasions the parties do not wish to examine civil parties very closely, and it occurs to us that this may be another possible opportunity for a waiver by Nguyen Chia. In respect of that civil party, that person is either here already or is flying from Europe, so it would be really helpful to have some indication as soon as possible. So, President, I think that's everything that you wanted covered. Simply to ask to assist the trial chamber as much as you can, Mr. Kopi, as I know you will, to give as much notice as possible. And there seems to be one other matter. Oh, the presentation of Kyo Sampan documents. Obviously, that includes the opportunity for the parties to comment on those documents. It's not simply finishing the presentation by the prosecutor. It incorporates the rest of the part of the process as well. I think that's everything now.
Mr. President, Your Honours, one practical issue and one issue already in response to your queries. As you know, tomorrow and Monday the court is closed, and there might be practical difficulties in speaking to our client. I think my colleague Sonun is there right now. maybe we could arrange for something in order to speak. I hope that that'll work, but I just want you to let you know that. The second thing is the queries about possible waivers. I think it's good to indicate that in respect of the waiver of the witness, Mr. Rokov, Mr. Nguyen was quite clear while instructing us that this was a waiver, that the waiver had to be seen as an exception. I don't think he will have the same, probably have the same position when it comes to civil parties. So I'm inclined to say, of course, without having spoken to him, that he might agree to a waiver in respect of the civil party, but not necessarily in respect of witness GC 100.
Yes, thank you for that early indication, Mr. Koppe. The Chamber fully understands the position and has suggested only 2 names which may provide an opportunity for a waiver. I emphasise that the Chamber has not indicated any suggestion of a waiver for any of the others. Thank you.
The President. The time is now appropriate for the day adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn now and resume on Tuesday, the 5th of February 2013, starting from 9 o'clock in the morning. And the hearing scheduled for the 5th of February 2013, as Judge Cartwright advised the party, we are going to hear the key documents concerning the roles of the co-accused. Khieu Samphan, to be presented by the prosecutor, together with the observation as well as objection and responses by other parties. And if time allows, we are going to hear the civil party or witnesses. And the Chamber just now asked the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chir, and we will assess the situation as it unfolds. The security guards are now instructed to bring the co-accused, Mr. Ieng Sari and Mr. Khieu Samphan, back to the detention facility and bring them back to the courtroom on the 5th of February 2013 at before 9 o'clock in the morning. As for Mr. Ieng Sari, he will remain in the holding cell downstairs where the audio-visual equipment is linked for him to observe the proceeding remotely. The court is now adjourned.